Good evening. I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome to Nashville. It's been many years since 9/11. There's a stunning new tower in Lower Manhattan where the Twin Towers once stood. The Pentagon has long since been repaired. Once a year, we honor 2,977 people who were killed by the terrorists that day. And at the annual September service, we see those who were left behind. The parents, the spouses, the children, brothers and sisters, 30,000 of them still living with that sudden and terrible loss. Yet here we are decades later with protesters across the country trying to argue that known terrorists and gang members should not be thrown out of our country. Even a U.S. district judge tried to stop the deportations. Well, President Trump knows that it's his job to keep the country safe, yet a single judge and thousands of protesters think they know better. Well, joining us for this important discussion is the editor-in-chief of the Breitbart News, Alex Marlow. Welcome back, Alex.
Hi, Pastor. Great to see you.
One of the cable channels had some predictable headlines on the screen. Courts face off with Trump over deportation of illegal aliens, and White House denies judge's order to stop deportations. Well, my headline is "Evil is at hand." They hate Trump so much that they're trying to make the case that we should keep the enemy here on our city streets and in our neighborhoods. Now there's an effort to try to impeach that judge for what he did. I know you've just spoken to the president recently. What does he think about what's happening?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's two issues here at play. I think there's one that's the messaging issue, and the messaging one clearly favors the president and people who support the president, because the left has once again gotten themselves into one of these positions where it's not just an 80-20 issue. This is what the President Trump told me was a 95 issue. He said there's a 95-5 issue, where 95% of the country thinks a certain way, 5% thinks the other way, and he doesn't know who anyone in the 5% is. Everyone in the country with a brain knows we need to get these people out. They have no right to be here. They shouldn't be here. And it's a fool's errand to try to stop President Trump from deporting them. These are criminals, all of them. And it's one of those things where every person in a vacuum in private would admit to you they agree with this. So optically, of course, we're going to win. But the question is, can we literally get them to leave? And if these judges, for whatever reason, feel like they are going to single-handedly try to block executive actions, it is more complicated how to oppose them. And you could see while I was there with the president and his team, they are still working on their strategy to try to stop them. You can see it working out in real time right now with Stephen Miller, who's the president's top policy advisor. His Twitter account or his X account, he keeps posting various, I think, messaging plays that they've got going that they're trying to test drive for the public. But I think standing up to these judges is more complicated than it seems.
Well, I want to ask you about the protesters, the ones who are now burning Tesla cars and the group that took over the lobby of the Trump Tower. They were waving their pro-Hamas flags and shouting about how they wanted an anti-Israeli protest organizer to be freed. Well, a year ago, I saw the video evidence of what Hamas did to the Jews they captured near Gaza. Is that what these protesters want to have happen here?
Yeah, it's hard to know. These people are so lost. These are the exact same people who bought Teslas in 2022 because they wanted to stick it to the Republicans, and now they're burning their own Teslas and defacing them because they want to stick it to the Republicans. I mean, these are people who are not a clear thinkers. So I don't really know what they're up to other than just acting in a blind rage. But all this is vandalism. Some of it's terrorism. I'm sure some of it is funded by the institutional left and parts of their establishment that would like to sow chaos within this country. But they do seem very lost. And so you don't know when a lost group of people who are acting very desperate, how they'll behave. You've seen this rash of swatting where they're calling the police to conservative opinion makers' houses in the middle of the night. Some of them, sometimes the police have their guns drawn. They don't know what's going on because they were told a certain thing when the complaints were called in. All this is very scary, and it is violent. So just remember, when they've accused us of violence, we're not the violent ones. They're the violent ones, and they have been for a long time.
Alex, you had a headline up on your site that said 8-time deported kidnapper removed by ICE to Mexico. 8 times, and he still found his way back to the United States. Is this what the Biden administration left behind for Tom Homan and Kristi Noem to have to clean up?
Yeah, they really did. We think the number might be something like 15 million came in under Biden, which is just amazing that that's what they wanted for this country. And it's something that needs to be, people need to be reminded of this, because if you're a reader of Breitbart, you've been reading headlines like this for 12, 13 years. We've been posting these types of things. And I don't want people to numb to it. I want people to understand how not a single one of these should be acceptable. Every single incident of a career criminal, a serial criminal being allowed to re-enter the country is an outrage. This is how people die. This is how communities get ruined. This is how eventually our country would get ruined if we allow for it to continue, which is why it's so important we do all the deportations we can, and we seal up the border once and for all, so that you only get into this country if you're an invited guest, and we hold those guests to a very high standard, even a higher standard than normal Americans, because they are our guest, the same way you would hold guests in your own home to a high standard.
You know, you mentioned a moment ago the violence that we're seeing now at the Tesla dealerships and Trump Tower and beyond. But it's reminiscent of not very long ago. We had BLM riots across our nation. Cities were burning in our largely peaceful protest. It seems to me there's an abundance of evidence that the violence is not on the conservative side of this discussion. Why are we so easily manipulated? Is it the media? Do we have short memories? How do we lose sight of the reality?
So they've always used projection. It's been their favorite tactic. One of the great examples of this, the greatest example, one I cite frequently, is the whole nature of the Russia collusion hoax with Trump was all because Hillary Clinton and the Clintons were very vulnerable on Russia. My friend Peter Schweitzer, our colleague at Breitbart, revealed that Hillary Clinton had allowed for the State Department to sell 80% of our uranium reserves to the Russians. Bill Clinton had gotten $500,000 for a 45-minute speech in Russia. So they had deep ties to the Russians, and that was seen as a big vulnerability to them when Hillary was running against Trump. So they cast Trump as the Russian stooge. Now, Trump won, and then he got in, and then he was actually quite tough on the Russians. He blocked Nord Stream. He killed all these Wagner troops in Syria, which is the Russian special forces. He sent Ukraine weapons, Javelin missiles, proactively before there was even any sort of an invasion. All this is very tough on Russia. And yet we were told nonstop that Trump is the one who is easy on Russia. That's what's happening here with the violence, is they're the ones who act violent. They're the ones who rioted in the streets. They're the ones who tried to assassinate Trump. They are the ones who are vandalizing all these Teslas, committing acts of terrorism. They're the ones who are swatting people who are on the right. All this is violent, but they will tell us we're the violent ones. So just don't fall for it, and use some of these examples to remind friends in your life who aren't convinced that they're the ones who are lying here.
Well, Alex, please stay with us for another segment. By the way, in addition to his role as Breitbart's editor-in-chief, he anchors a daily podcast called The Alex Marlow Show. You should listen when you can. We'll be right back. We're back now with Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. Let's talk about the economy and Mr. Trump's push to let us keep more of our income and have government spend less. The Democrats would have you believe that Elon Musk is ruining the country. But they said no such thing when President Obama did this very same thing. Listen to how he explained it.
And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit. We're off to a good start. Over the last 2 years, we've pulled the plug on all kinds of ridiculous practices. Apparently, the government used to overnight containers filled with nothing. Don't ask why that is. Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too, so we can invest in the things that we know will create good jobs and grow the economy.
But as I said, I don't remember any Democrats saying that Obama was ruining the country then. Do you?
No, of course not. And this is something that I follow the left media even more than I follow conservative media, because I feel like sometimes I get more insight. And this is a conversation that is taking place in some left-wing podcasting, is them saying that actually the real mistake here is not actually is not supporting what Musk is doing, and even more, maybe we should have done that stuff ourselves. That's what a lot of people are actually talking about. It's not really making it into the mainstream. The mainstream people are all outraged at Musk. They're saying he steals, which is pretty unbelievable, because they're acting as though him actually giving money back to the taxpayers is us stealing from the Treasury, which think about that as a cosmic irony. But people who are smart on the Democrat side know that they blew it. They should have done a Doge when Biden was in and when Obama was in, and they would have gotten all the credit that Trump and Musk are going to get when this thing gets settled. So they made a big mistake, and their move really should be to work with Trump and Musk to try to cut fat. That's their best play. They're not going to look great in the end, but they'll look okay. Them fighting these cuts to the most absurd things you've ever heard, you can do a laundry list of what those are, is just not going to play with the public. The public thinks the government is too bloated and they want cuts.
There's also a commentary by Joe Biden who said it was important to build trust in government. Listen to this.
It's about a simple proposition. The American people have lost confidence over the years in the ability of their government to deliver on what they promise. It's a pretty simple proposition. It's not the American people don't want to help the poor, or they don't want to make sure that we invest in the future. They doubt whether or not last government before that, this government, when any government can actually do it well. It was about regaining confidence, regaining the confidence of the American people that we knew how to husband their tax dollars.
You know, if only he'd meant what he said, Alex.
Yeah, that's the nature of this whole conversation, is that they have ability to say the right things and then to do nothing. So I just hope they're feeling very regretful, because it'd be nice if there were two good political parties in this country. But sadly, it seems like the permeating view on the Democrats these days that's winning out is that what Trump and Musk are doing is illegal, it's immoral, it's evil, all that stuff. No, it's not. You guys said the exact same stuff. Everyone thinks the government is too bloated, that the consultant class is too big, that the bureaucracy is too big, and it's time for sensible cuts. We cannot continue to rack up the debt the way we're racking it up. And so just restoring fiscal sanity into this country will be very welcome and will help us prosper. So they should really be getting on board with this, and hopefully they figure it out before long.
You know, it's interesting listening to the Democrats struggling to find someone to get behind for the next presidential race. There's no talk about the policies. They say that Gavin Newsom has good hair. Pete Buttigieg is openly gay. John Fetterman wears clothes to the Capitol that like you'd usually wear on the farm. No policies, just the optics of it all. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm very struck by how thin their bench is. I mean, I was so happy to hear that Tim Walz was going to go on a tour doing town halls, because he's so unlikable. He's so weird. He's the weirdest guy in all of Washington. That's another one of their projections, is he was the one calling J.D. Vance weird. He's a very normal guy. Walz is a big weirdo. So he's going around and he's rooting for Tesla to fail, even though people in his own state of Minnesota have pension plans that are invested in Tesla, even though there are countless people in this country, it's a made in America car company, who would lose their jobs if Tesla failed. He's openly rooting against this huge American innovative company. It's just not popular. It's really tone deaf that he's doing it. I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC she's known, I think she's lost her fastball. I think she's not as woke or as much of a loudmouth as this woman, Jasmine Crockett, who's stealing all the headlines on the far left. I think they really are without a leader. The polling on Gavin Newsom's new podcast is terrible. I don't think it's helping him with conservatives or independents or liberals. It just, they are so lost. And that's why it's so important for President Trump to get through as much of his agenda as he possibly can, as fast as he can. And I can tell you, Pastor, from my time at the White House, he agrees. That's the approach they're taking. They're trying to move at a breakneck speed to get stuff done while the Democrats are so weak.
Well, you know, clearly the party's in a deep hole, and it seems to be getting deeper. A new NBC poll shows that only 27% of those asked have a positive feeling about the Democrat Party, and double that number, 55%, have a negative feeling. Alex, how can they recover now that President Trump has the lead on all the key issues the voters want addressed?
Yeah, I think the first thing is they're going to have to eat some crow, and they're going to have to be able to say that we made some mistakes, which they can't do, because part of their nature is to never admit they're wrong. But they have to say we were wrong about Doge, and we were wrong about some of the bloat in our government. They should probably cast aside some of the less popular warmonger consultants who they've embraced. It was just very strange embracing families like the Cheney family. It was just, I don't know why they did that. It seemed like they took all of Republicans' worst ideas of our last 20 years and embraced those, and they gave us all of their best ideas. And it's funny because Trump is just seizing all of that, and it's just great. Like, no more wars all around the world. Trump wants to bring peace. when I was growing up, Republicans wanted to get us into every war. That's not the case anymore. Now Democrats want us in the wars and Republicans want peace. How did they let us do that? They're so stupid. So anyone who allowed for that to happen, they need to go away and they need some new, fresh ideas. But the problem is that's ways off. That's going to be years off. There have a lot of people who have a played out message and they're just trying to enrich themselves and to get attention on MSNBC. So I have no idea where it's going to go for them, Pastor, but I'll tell you that they don't either.
Well, Alex Marlow, as always, it's great to have you on. We'll see you again soon.
I hope so. Thank you.
When we come back, some thoughts on what's next. Then later, your turn at helping to produce the show. We're going to sort through some of your emails. I'll be right back. I believe Alex Marlow gave us a really nice insight into what President Trump and his team are doing in Washington. I'm grateful for their efforts, for their unrelenting energy. It seems like every morning they attack as if it's a brand new day and a first day on the job. I have a concern, though. If we don't match their energy with the commitment to change in our own hearts, in our own lives, in our own communities, I don't believe what they're initiating is sustainable. It reminds me, I've walked through many diagnoses with people who've been told they have cancer. Doctors come in with treatment protocols and regimens, surgeries, removal of tumors, chemotherapy, and there's tremendous victories. But if the cancer isn't completely removed, if it returns with a vengeance that's worse than the original diagnosis seemed to be. Well, I think we're in a similar place. President Trump and his team are addressing some evils that have been taking root on our watch. We were too busy, too distracted for whatever reason. We raised our voices and we've given them permission to introduce change. But we have to match their change. We have to match it in our lives. We've got to go back to our churches, get our Bibles out, come back to the fundamental principles of character that made our nation great to begin with. If we will do that around our kitchen table and at our holiday tables, in our friend circles, then I believe God will help us, that He will bless America again. If we don't, if we leave it to the professional politicians, the disease and the rot and the corruption will come back with a vengeance. We can't allow that. Let's choose God. If we'll do that, I assure you there's more reasons for hope than despair. When we return, I'm going to read some of your emails. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails. We always look forward to reading them. Karen Wilson emailed, I'm in support of President Trump and his plan for the border to protect our country. Well, Karen, I could not agree with you more. It is not compassionate to encourage people towards behavior that begins with the word illegal. We bought into the deception, and I'm very grateful for President Trump and Tom Homan and the entire team that are once again securing our borders. It's the best future for all involved. Linda D. from Arizona said, we the people want to know where our tax dollars are being spent. Government bureaucracy needs to end. We want truth. So if there's nothing to hide, follow the money. It's taxpayers' money. We the people want to know how you spent taxpayers' money. Linda, I agree with your thought. It's time for some transparency in Washington. We need to get some of the professional politicians' snouts out of the trough. Our lives will get better. Penny D. from Paradise, California. Pastor Jackson, you're greatly appreciated here in Northern California, where it's difficult to find a church that preaches biblical truth and that confronts culture like you're doing. Thank you for speaking the truth about culture and Christianity. Well, I'm delighted to know I have some friends in California. I'll start with Northern California and start to pray about the South. We pray for California. At the last newcomers meeting I had here at the church, there were over a dozen families that had moved here from California. Welcome to the free state of Tennessee. If you ever miss our live program, you can go to YouTube. It's there at ajnow.com and watch it at your leisure. If you go to YouTube, be sure to subscribe and like it. It'll help us share the message. Make sure you send your emails to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. And from all of us here in Nashville, thank you for joining us tonight. I pray you have a wonderful evening.